Jai Gurudev. We're in Joshimath right now, and being here reminds me of the first time I came here, which was about 26 years ago, and what was going to become the beginning of a very interesting series of events with Mahavatar Babaji and Paramahamsa Vishwananda. So 1998, I was here 11 years before I'd met Guruji with another Kriya Yoga group which I was part of. And it was my first pilgrimage to this part of India, into the Himalayas, with a Kriya Yoga group. So it so happens that we arrived here late at night to take a stopover because we're en route to Badrinath. And we arrived here about 9:30 at night, having been on the road for maybe about 12 hours. It had been a very, very long day. So our group, which was probably about 35 strong, basically left their bag to the hotel, and then we quickly went out to get a bite to eat, to get some dinner. And then we came back to the hotel, feeling very tired. And as we entered the hotel, there was a woman standing at the door. And she had started to speak to some of the other Kriya Yogis in the group about a very interesting story she had to tell about her experiences in Badrinath with Babaji. She had just come back from Badrinath, and as she saw our group, she said, "I'm so happy to see other Kriya Yogis." Anyway, our group leader got wind of what she was saying, and basically what she was saying was that in Badrinath, for many days consecutively, Babaji had been appearing at night at the end of her bed. And this was a physical appearance she was receiving from Mahavatar Babaji. Anyway, the group leader didn't like what she was saying and basically said she was crazy and that we should basically all go to bed and just ignore her. And that's what the group did. But somehow it didn't feel right for me. There was something very special. She was so beautiful. There was a glow on her face. And I just couldn't see how this person should be ignored. So eventually everyone retreated to their rooms. And I found myself in the lobby with just this woman and two other people that she had come with. And so we got talking. And after about 5 minutes, she basically pointed like this and said, "Look over there." And there was basically 3 steps. And she said, "Look over there, Mahavatar Babaji is standing just there." And I looked, and I couldn't see, and I said, I don't see him. So she said, "Let your eyes go slightly out of focus and look again." And I tried, and I couldn't see him. Anyway, for the next hour, she basically started to tell me what Babaji was saying. And this went on for about an hour. And at one point in that hour, she basically said, and I was sitting down with her to my side, she said, he's sitting on your lap. And the way I understood it was that he was on one side. And as soon as she said that, I felt this cold sensation in a very specific point in the middle of my chest, and it was instant. As soon as she said those words, he's there, he's sitting just on you. I felt him. I felt this very cold sensation in the middle of my chest. Anyway, after about an hour, she said, "Is there anything else you want to know?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Okay, well, it's time to go." And I asked her, "Well, can I take your details?" And this is 1998. So, you know, the only thing I could ask her was for her email address and contact number. And she said, "No." All I got was her name. But she said, "I will see you again." She also told me that she was getting ready to leave her body. She was basically getting ready to drop her body. And what had been happening in Badrinath was that her body was basically just dissolving into light. And she was basically getting ready to leave her body. So that night, after she left, I basically wrote everything down, like I remember from that encounter. And the next day, I didn't want to tell anyone what had happened. I mean, the rest of the group had been told basically to ignore her. But I remember we went to a temple and I tried to meditate and I focused on my third eye and I basically fell over. Whatever happened that night was so strong, I could not even sit upright anymore to try and meditate. It was that strong. I then went back to London at the end of the pilgrimage, and I basically didn't share this story with anyone. It was so personal. I just, for years, I didn't tell anyone what had happened. But 11 years later, after this encounter in Joshimath, I met Guruji, Paramahamsa Vishwananda, for the second time. And this was at the end of an Atma Kriyoga course where he was basically giving the Shakti Path. And he gave the Shakti Path to all of us at a time when there was no other Atma Kriyoga teachers who could do the Shakti Path. And we had a short satsang, and he then left the room. And then he came back into the room and he pointed like this in my direction. And so I looked over my shoulder thinking he's obviously pointing at someone else, and only to realize there was no one there. And then someone said, "Go, he's calling you." And as I went up to him, the first thing he said is, "Roshan." And I had to correct him. I said, "That's not my name." I had another spiritual name at the time, and I gave my world name, Manish. And he said, "No." He said, "From today, you're Roshan." And he said, "Did you know that Mahavatar Babaji was here today?" And it was such a mental response. I said, "Of course, he had to be here, right?" And I'm thinking, he had to be here because we just did Shakti Path. But I wasn't really, it was almost like an automatic response. And then he took his finger and he put it in my chest. And the same sensation from 11 years ago came back. And just before he did that, he said, "Did you know that Mahavatar Babaji was here today?" And I don't know where the words came from because they were never on my mind. I said to him straight after that, I said, "I wish I could bring all my Kriya Yoga students to you." And then I just burst into tears. And I cried probably for a good couple of minutes, and he was just watching me. And he was so sweet, he was just watching me cry. And then he said, "Okay, you come for darshan tonight." Because he was going to give a darshan in London, which I had not planned to attend. And I remember I rang my wife and I said, I'm going to be a bit late tonight. I said, "Just be happy for me." And I went to darshan and I just cried. I just cried throughout the darshan. But the story doesn't finish there. Because some years later, I had the chance and I asked Guruji, I said, "Guruji, I met this woman in Joshimath." And I described her and he said, "Yes, I know who she is." He said, "She's a direct disciple of Mahavatar Babaji." And when I think about this story, for me the lesson is about judgment. That night, this person came, and she came and she was so happy and beaming that she was meeting Kriya Yogis, followers of Mahavatar Babaji and the Kriya Yoga tradition. And this story seemed somehow too amazing, too good to be true. And so everybody ignored her. And actually they judged her. And I chose not to. I thought, at least give her the benefit of the doubt. Let's at least hear what she wants to say. Because she came with a message. And it could have been any one of that group of 35, maybe even a group of us that could have had that episode with this woman. And so, the point is, she was the real deal. She wasn't crazy. She was and is a direct disciple of Mahavatar Babaji. And in that moment, when I met Guruji, he gave me my spiritual name, and I realized he knew exactly what had happened 11 years ago before I knew anything about him, because he recreated the whole experience for me. And I remember in the weeks and months later, every time I'd meet him, he would put his finger in my chest like this. And that's the way he was working with me. Eventually at some point he stopped doing it, but it happened a few times. And this connection with Guruji and Babaji is so intimate. It's like they both know each other. intimately. They both, from my perspective, give that experience collectively. And it's like one is representing the other to the point where I don't see the separation. I just don't. So, and it's so nice actually to be able to tell this story in Joshimath, because actually this is where it kind of started for me. I was already part of other Kriya Yoga traditions. Some years later, Guruji asked me to teach Atma Kriya Yoga, and it's basically the focus of my Kriya Yoga teaching now. But actually that encounter in Joshimath, it just gave me a different perspective and a different love for Mahavatar Babaji and also his disciples, and in time, my Sadguru, Paramahamsa Vishwananda. So, Jai Gurudev.